All right, here we go, 8:40. Good evening. We're ready to get started. We are in Maseches Pesachim Daf Gimel, and we are starting 4 lines from the bottom of Daf Beis Amud Beis. Here is a very short summary of what we've learned. When do we do Bdikas Chametz? Based on the first line of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said Or la'arba asar. On the Or of the 14th, we've gone through, to my count, we've gone through 9 questions so far in the Gemara, trying to figure out whether or not we follow Rav Huna or Rabbi Huda. Do we say that Or means the morning, namely the morning of the 14th of Nisan, we'd wake up and do Bdikas Chametz. That's when you would do the 10 pieces of bread. Or do we say Or is the night before, the sheet of Rabbi Huda? We've seen one committed answer of night, and all the other ones were rejected. We're going to learn a number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more questions in this area, and then we're going to be done with this conversation because we will have clarity by the middle of Gimel Amud Aleph as to what the answer is. We know the answer now because we've been doing it since we were little kids, but this is the background as to how we got there. 4 lines from the bottom. Meisive, we know, historically speaking, that when we would get to Rosh Chodesh, that they would be masi and masuos. They would, on the hilltops, they would kind of make these fires, and then everyone would know that it was Mekadesh HaChodesh, that it is now. They had the Eidim to testify that we are now starting a new Rosh Chodesh. So when do we do the masuos? When do we make these fires? Ein masuo and masuos, masi and masuos, ella ala chodesh shenira bismano lekacho. Only in a month, which is what's called nira bismano lekacho, where it's seen in its time to sanctify. We're not going to go deep into this sugya, but enough to understand it. Rashi, what does that mean when it says bismano lekacho? So we take a look at Rashi, 6 lines from the bottom toward the end of the line. Dibur hamaschil ela al hachodesh shenir bismano lekacho biyom shloshim shenir lekadesh. Only if it's done on the 30th day. That's when you see the moon. You see that's when the Kiddush HaChodesh takes place. The Emasai. During that month, when the 30th day is where the Kiddush HaChodesh is now sanctified, the day 30 is Rosh Chodesh. Emasai masi and masuos leor avuro. What does leor avuro mean? Remember our question. What does the word or mean? What does the word or mean here? So it seems to be the night after. That's what Rashi highlights here. Must be the night after. Alma. We see from here that the word or is ortahu. Says the Gemara, Shma mina. Very good. I accept your question, and or is orta. Or means night. Again, a support for what we are talking about. Let's talk about another halacha. We know, of course, that when the Kohanim would do the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash, if they were to do so without kiddush yadayim v'raglayim, if they would do so without washing their hands and feet, they'd be chayav misa. A Kohen cannot do the avodah without kiddush yadayim v'raglayim. Now, let's say that the following took place. 2 lines from the bottom. Meisvei. Hayaomed kol halaylu makriv al mizbeach. A Kohen's on his mishmar. He's doing the avodah the whole night, and he gets to morning. Leora. What does leora mean in this case? Seemingly in the morning, because he was up all night, and then it says leora. In the morning, leora ta'un kiddush yadayim v'raglayim divrei Rabbi. Rabbi was of the opinion he needs to wash his hands again. Oh, so therefore, says the Gemara, ora shiny. Says the Gemara, no. You were doing good up until now, but here, this word is ora, it's not or, and therefore you cannot use this as a question against our Mishnah. There are different types of questions. This is the question that we're just shutting your question down. Your question's a 0, because we're trying to find out what the word or means, but you're bringing me a case where it says ora. So last line, Beis Amud Beis says, ora shiny, you cannot ask a question from there. The word ora does not mean what you think it means. Totally unrelated case. The Torah speaks in Parshas Tazria about a woman who gives birth. I'll quickly read the psukim and then we'll discuss these halachos. I'm going to skip the first few. We know that if a woman gives birth, then v'imne kevase late, if she has a girl, the tame'ah shvu'ayim kinidasa, then all of the dam that a woman would see for the 2 weeks post childbirth for a young baby girl, kinidasa, that is dam tuma. The difference would be if a couple would be intimate at that time, they'd be chayav kares because she's a nida. That's totally not allowed. However, the shishim yom v'sheshes yamim teishev al dmei tahara. The next 66 days is what's referred to in halacha as dam tohar. That blood that exits from a woman post-birth, but not in the first 2 weeks, that blood is not dam nida. It's called dam tohar. And technically speaking, though we are not of such a custom, technically speaking, if a couple were to be intimate, there's no isser kares there. That she would have had to have gone to the mikvah in order to get out of the status of tuma. But the blood of those days is not dam nida. So 14 days of tuma, 66 days of dam tohar, that's 80. And then uvimlos yemei tahara levein olivas, when she finishes her days of tahara, boy or a girl, tavi keves ben shnaso leola, she should bring a korban. Fine, that's the backdrop for our conversation. Says the Gemara, last line of Beis Amud Beis, says the Gemara, Masiv Mar Zutra. We're going to ask a question from a source in the Tanoim. This source says the Gemara increases. We learned this together many months ago, almost a year ago, a while ago. Or l'shmonim ve'echad. All right, now we already see our question. What did we say? That on the 81st day, she brings a korban. Day 80, that's still dam tohar. Day 80, it's still dam tohar. Day 81, says a new day. Day 80, if she were to have a miscarriage that day, but if the fetus was old enough, then that's all considered part of one birth. She'd bring one korban. So that's what the Gemara says. Or l'shmonim ve'echad. On the night of after you completed day 80 at Shkia, now you're in the night of day 81, and she miscarries on that day. Do we include this in the singular korban on day 81 with the previous child? Is it one korban for two births? Or no, maybe the fact that she lost this child after Tzeis on that day, now we're in the nighttime of 81, now she has to bring a second korban, because we're outside of the 80 days. Because it said, Torah, to the language of the Torah. So again, she had a baby 80 days ago, she has to bring a korban on day 81. Now, after day 80, but before the morning of 81, on the Or L'Shmonim Ve'echad, on the night of 81, she was pregnant and lost a child, Rachmana Litzlan. Does that go back to the initial baby and she only brings one korban for two babies? Or no, is this now day 81 in new territory? Machlokes in the Tanaim. Beis Shammai potrin mi korban. Beis Shammai says we still link this loss of a child to the initial birth and only one korban. She's pater from two korbanos. Uveis Hillel mechayv. Beis Hillel says no, it's a new korban. This is you're outside of day 80. And what's Beis Hillel's argument? Amar lahen, we're top of Gimel Amud Aleph. We're at the second line. Amar lahen Beis Hillel leBeis Shammai. What are you talking about? Maishna or shmonim ve'echad miyom shmonim ve'echad. See the language there? What's the difference between the or shmonim ve'echad, the night, obviously, miyom shmonim ve'echad? We'll come back to that in a minute. But Beis Hillel's argument to Beis Shammai is gewaldig. He's like, what are you talking about? You're outside of day 80. Once you're in the territory of day 81, you're outside of 80. So he says, I don't understand. How can you can distinguish between the night of 81 and the following morning of 81? Im shiva lo letuma, lo yishva lo lekorban. Let's say that this woman went to the mikveh. Let's say she wasn't pregnant during the 80 days, okay? And let's say on the night of 81, she gets her machzor, she gets her period. She's Tmei Nida. That's not Dam Tohar. She's a Nida, entirely a Nida. So Beis Hillel says, Im Shiva lo letuma. If the night after day 80, if the or of Shmonim Echad, if that day is a day of Tuma for her, then why wouldn't it be the same status for a Korban? Of course she should be chayiv two Korbanos. Good. End of the brisa. Says the Gemara, Midika Amre Beis Hillel Beis Shammai Maishna or Shmonim Ve'echad Miyom Shmonim Ve'echad. The way that Beis Hillel argued the case, that because we know that the or Shmonim Ve'echad is a day of Tuma, so to the morning. So therefore, Shma Mina or Tahu. Therefore, I see that the word or, the way Beis Hillel used it, it must mean night. Says the Gemara, Shma Mina. All right, things are starting to align. This is the third question out of 12 that has indicated that we hold that or is night. Let's keep going. Next case. There is a din in the Torah called nosar. After certain korbanos, you are allotted a certain amount of time. For some korbanos, you're allowed that day and that night. For some korbanos, you're allowed the day, the night, and the following day. So we're discussing the latter. We're discussing a korban shlamim. And by a korban shlamim, you're allowed to have, let's say, what's today, Tuesday? So Tuesday morning, I bring a korban. I have all day Tuesday. I have Tuesday night. And I also have Wednesday during the day up until Shkia. Says the Gemara, Meisive, Yachal Yehei Nechal or L'Shlishi. Maybe when it comes to the korban shlamim, yes, I have Tuesday day, Tuesday night, and Wednesday day, but maybe I also have or l'shlishi the following night as well. Why would I assume that? Vidinhu. Whenever we see this phrase in Shas, vidinhu, you are about to see a kal v'chomer. You're about to see a logic that's presented by the Gemara. The language of vidinhu means we're about to present this type of thinking. Says the Gemara, zvachim, the type of korbanos which are ne'echalim liyom echad, they're allowed to be eaten that one day and the night that follows. Ushlamim ne'echalim l'shnei yamim. And we know, like we just said, that shlamim are eaten for 2 days with the night in between. Ma lahalan laila achar yom. Just like by zvachim, we say that you get the night after the day. If I brought my zvachim, if I bring a chatas in the morning, I have all of Tuesday and Tuesday night, then afkan, maybe here by a shlamim where it's day, night, day, then maybe I should have the night that follows. Afkan, laila achar hayom, I should have the night going into day 3. Says the Gemara, you can't say that. Talmud Lomar, because of the Torah. The Torah says, Biyom zivchachem ye'achel mimacharas v'hanosar ad yom. And the Gemara teaches the word yom, be'od yom hu ne'echal, ve'nu ne'echal or shlishi. When it comes to a shlamim, you're never allowed to have the night that follows. You get day, night, day, but not the night that follows. You get Tuesday night, and Wednesday morning, but you do not get Wednesday night, even though there is a din, even though there is a logic to say that it's somewhat comparable to a korban chatas, because the korban chatas gets the night after the day. So why don't we get the night after the day by shlamim? Says Gemara, the pasuk doesn't allow for that. This brisa continues, and then we'll come back to our question. The brisa continues about the sreifa of nosar, because we have to make sure that we burn nosar so that no one inadvertently eats the nosar. It's an issur d'oraisa to eat nosar. So says the Gemara, we're about 10, 12 lines down on Gimel Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, Yochel yisaref miyad. Maybe by a shlamim we should burn it right away. V'dinhu. And here's the logic as to why I would assume that. Zvachim, the korbanos that are ne'echalin liyom v'layla echad, you only get Tuesday morning and Tuesday night. Ushlamim ne'echalin l'shnei yamim v'layla echad. And when it comes to the shlamim, you get day, night, day, Tuesday morning, Tuesday night, Wednesday day. Malahalan, just like by the korbanos, takef la'achila sreifa, immediately after the night of the chata, so you get Tuesday night, Tuesday day, Tuesday night. So when that night's over in the morning, on Wednesday morning, you burn it. So maybe we say over there, malahalan takef la'achila sreifa, right after the period of time, we burn it by the zebach, by a korban chatas, for example. Afkan here by the shlamim, takef la'achila sreifa, maybe we should have said the same thing. And when would that burning have been? Well, because the shlamim is allowed day, night, day, Tuesday night, and Wednesday day, the sreifa would have been Wednesday night. Says the Gemara, you can't do that. Talmud Lomar, we have a pasuk that rejects this idea. V'hanosar mi besar hazebach b'yom hashlishi bo'eshi sareif. And another diuk from the same word, just a different din. B'yom ata soreif v'i ata sorfo b'layla. You're not allowed to do sreifa at night. End of the brisa. Says the Gemara, let's analyze. Midika amar yehe ne'echal or l'shlishi. The way that we use the language of or l'shlishi, there's only one possible meaning of or l'shlishi. Because when are you allowed to eat a shlamim? Day, night, day. Tuesday night, Wednesday day. What is the next available slot? It's Wednesday night. So we know that or must be orta. Alma or orta hu shmamina. Says the Gemara, you're correct. You're correct. This is another raya. We're getting there. We're almost done. Another example. This one's a very simple example because we are familiar with the davening of Yom Kippur not too long ago. Tashma, first of the long lines, a third of the way down, a little bit more, maybe halfway down. Says the Gemara, quoting from a brisa. Or shel Yom Kippurim on the, I'll translate as night because that's going to be the conclusion. On the first night, on the Mariv of Yom Kippur, that night, after Kol Nidre, or Shal Yom Kippurim Mispalel Sheva, we say a Shmona Esrei that has 7 brachos in it, umisvade, and we say vidui. Shacharis Mispalel Sheva umisvade. The morning we daven Shacharis, it has 7 brachos, and we say vidui. B'musaf Mispalel Sheva umisvade. And then we say there as well, we say a Shmona Esrei with 7 brachos, and we say vidui. B'mincha Mispalel Sheva umisvade. Mincha on the afternoon, we say Shmona Esrei with 7, and we are misvade. Be'arvis, and on the Mariv that follows Yom Kippur, mispalel me'ein shmona asar. Remember, we learned about this in Brachos. What's me'ein shmona asar? Possibly Havinenu, according to some Rishonim. And the Havinenu is basically a distillation of all of the Brachos between the first 3 and the last 3. And we end with Baruch Atah Hashem Shomei Tefillah. That's the sheet of the Tanna Kama. Rabbi Chanina ben Gamliel Omer, no, you can't do that. He said Mishum Avosav, he had a tradition from his forefathers, from his parents. Mispalel Shmona Asar Shlemos. On Motzei Yom Kippur, you have to say a full Shmona Esrei with all 18 brachos. Why? Because we need to add in the added aspect of the bracha b'atachonin. And if you say the Havinenu, there's nowhere to add in atachon antanu. And therefore, we have to say a full Shmona Esrei. End of the brisa. Alma, what do we see from here? What is the first? Look at the first long line of the Gemara. Or Shal Yom Kippurim. There's only one tefillah that could have been referring to, which was Mariv, Yom Kippur night. So it says the Gemara, Alma, or Tahu Shmamina. Last one, and then we are just going to get to the punchline of the Gemara. We know it's a foregone conclusion already. Last try. Says the Gemara, Tashma, Detani Debe Shmuel. Detani Debe Shmuel, we have a quote from Shmuel. And what does he say? Lele Arba Asar, at the night of the 14th, Bodkin Esacham is the Orhainer, doesn't get more black and white than that. There's no confusion of the word or. We don't lack clarity. We don't have to ask, is or a descriptive word or a definition? We don't have to look at any of the sugyas. Everyone agrees. And says the Gemara as follows, Alma or Tahu. Ella, Bain Rav Huna uvein Rav Yehuda de Kule Alma or Tahu. They both really do agree. Wait a minute. We started the Gemara in Daf Beis and Aleph, and we said that one held it was Nagi and one held it was Lele. We know there is something different between them. That's how we started. So how can you tell me that there's no machlokes? Everyone's happy? We just spent a whole blot arguing about what the word or means based on the fact that we said Rav Huna says that it's Nagi, that it's day, and Rabbi Yehuda says it's Lele. Which one is it? So what are they arguing about? Marki Asrei. Nothing. They're literally arguing about nothing because in city X, night is called Nagi, and in city Y, night is called Leili. Be'asrei de Rav Huna, in the city of Rav Huna, literally the place of Rav Huna, Karu Nagi, we call night Nagi, and Uve'asrei de Rav Yehuda, Karu Leile. Very simple. That's unbelievable. We just learned a whole blot of Gemara, back and forth, 15 different sugyas and shas to prove whether or not the word or means what it means. We concluded and then said, by the way, the whole thing was a house of cards. Because at the end of the day, there was no question. Rav Huna, when he said Nagi, he also meant night. We just thought he meant day, but in his city, the word Nagi meant night. So then asks the Gemara, okay, can you just make it simple for us? Vitana di done, 2/3 of the way down. My time lotani lele. Just write what you have to say. Why are you writing or? Don't make it difficult for us. Just write what you want to write. And here, and we'll go into some Agadata here, a beautiful Gemara, a very well-known Gemara, says the Gemara, we couldn't. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was giving us a message. Lishna me'al Yehuda nakat. We speak in an elevated form. And even though the word Laila is not a bad word, it's throughout the Torah. We see it all the time in Breshis. Laila is not a bad word, but it's not as clean it has no negative references when you use the word or. The word Laila can mean, right? We have Vemunascha Baleilos, the night's more difficult, we need Emunah. So the word Laila has a gentle negative connotation, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was teaching us a very important idea. Yes, we took a blot to understand it. Why? So that we would understand the value of Lishna Ma'al Yehuda Nakat. Uchad Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, like the very early Amora Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, what does he say? Tamar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, La'olam Yotzi Adam Davar Meguna Mipiv. A person should never let slip from their mouth something that's maguna, something that's disgusting. Sheharei ikem hakasuv shmone osios v'lohotzi davar meguna mipiv. Because, as we will now see 5 or 6 examples where the Torah went out of its way to use real estate, which in the learning world is a big deal. We've made diyukim on one letter. We've made diyukim on half of one letter. We've made diyukim on the lack of a letter. So when the Torah goes out of its way by 8 letters to not speak negatively, that's what it's teaching us about a davar meguna. Shene emar. What's the example where the Torah went out of its way 8 letters? Shene emar, 12 lines from the bottom. Mina behema hatehora. Umina behema should be hatmeya, but it says instead of mina behema, asher einena tehora. Why are you saying asher einena tehora, the animal which is not? Say it's tameh. It's much shorter. It's 8 letters shorter to say tameh. That's a beautiful raya. Rav Papa Amar Tesha. I have a pasuk where I can show you that the Torah went 9 letters out of its way to avoid speaking negatively. Shneimar ki yevacha ish asher lo yeh tahor mikra laila. A person who has a zera emit at night, a mikra laila, asher lo yeh tahor. Just right, asher yeh tameh. 9 letters out of the way. Fine. Says the Gemara, Ravina Amar Eser. He says that previous example is actually 10 letters because vav de tahor. The word tahor is shalim. The vav is actually in the word tahor. According to the previous shita, the vav was missing. The word was written chaser, just tes hey reish tahor. We read it tahor, but it was missing the vav. And still yet another example. Rav Acha bar Yaakov Amar Sheshesrei. 16 letters the Torah went out of its way to highlight the value of not speaking meguna. Shne'emar ki amar mikrahu bilti tahor, out of the way. You're going around. You're going the wrong way. Bilti tahoru ki lo tahor. So just say ki tameh. Again, 16 letters out of the way. Beautiful. All of this is to not speak badly. But now let's elevate. Says the Gemara, 10 lines from the bottom. Tanya, a brisa. Tanya debei Rabbi Shmuel. La'olam yisaper adam b'lashon nikia. Not just avoid the negative, avoid the lashon meguna, but we should be speaking b'lashon nikia, very refined, very clean. Sheharei bizav kira'o merkav. A zav is a person who has some type of disease. This is speaking of the male version, where he has a discharge of some kind. This is spoken about in detail in Maseches Nida. And when he rides an animal, it says merkav. Merkav, riding an animal. The implication, 1 leg on each side of the animal. That's what the word implies. You're riding a horse. That's what it implies. However, uveisha, in regards to a woman, kira'o moshav. When it refers to a woman who's riding on an animal, it says moshav, that she sits on the animal. Now, Rashi here writes explicitly, she's riding the animal the same way, but the language that we use should be more gentle. It should be more tsanua. So instead of saying merkav, which implies straddling the animal, sitting right leg, left leg, animal, right? By a woman, we say moshav. It's not appropriate to make a distinction here. And before we go any further, Rashi here and the Rabbeinu Hanan will speak about this concern of pisuk raglayim, of ensuring that when we not only speak about the way a woman would travel on an animal, but even the way a woman would dress, is that there's no pisuk raglayim. This is one of the Mari Mekomos that people use for skirts, is that there should be no pisuk raglayim, no separation between the legs, and coupled with another din in brachos of shokvi isha erva, that above the knee is considered erva. We got into this habit of women dressing in a way where they would cover their legs at least up to their knees. Okay, so some of them are mekomos. Either way, that's the sampling that Rabbi Shmuel gives from this brisa to speak b'lashon nikia, that when a man rides an animal, it's merkav, and moshav is a slightly more modest form of speaking. The Omer as well. We have another pasuk number 2. V'tivchar lashon arumim. You should choose language of arumim. Here, the language of arumim is from the shoresh of orma, to be clever, to be creative. Find the right clever way to say what you want to say. And another pasuk, the Omer v'das vasai berur me. I always read this pasuk wrong. Let me read it correctly. The pasuk says here. Here it is. V'das vasai barur milelo. Your speech should be very clear. Barur. So then, famously, whenever you see a proof that has multiple psukim, the Gemara is going to say, "My ve'omer." Just bring me the proof from one source. My ve'omer. Why did you add ve'omer the next pasuk and ve'omer the next pasuk? So it says the Gemara, because if I only had the first pasuk, I would have made the following mistake. We are 5 lines from the bottom. That the only time we have to be concerned about this is with dinei deoraisa val b'derabbanan, but maybe by rabbinic issues I don't have to be so concerned. Toshma ve'omer b'tivchar lashon arumim. There we have a pasuk of a tivchar lashon arumim, which is from a pasuk in Iyov, not in the Torah but in Tanakh, and that indicates to us that we extend the need for lashon nikia not only b'dinei deoraisa but even b'dinei derabbanan. What about the next pasuk? Maybe we say only when we're dealing with halachic issues that are derabanan. That's when I have to be worried about lashon nikia. But outside the base medrash, stam, no big deal. I can speak without lashon naki. You have to make melulu. I did it again. What does it mean? Milelu. You have to make sure that you speak clearly. That's why we have 3 different psukim to make sure that we know midoraisa, midirabanan, and outside of the learning world, you have to speak b'lashon naki. So that's what the Gemara says. But the Gemara is bothered by the sample that was given for lashon naki by Rabbi Shmuel, because Rabbi Shmuel said that when we reference a woman who's traveling on an animal, we say moshav. Says the Gemara, that's not true. 3 lines from the bottom. Uvi lo ksiba merkav. What are you talking about? It doesn't say the word merkav when a woman is traveling on an animal. That's totally not true. Haksiv v'takam rivka v'naroseh v'tir kavna alag molim. What do you mean? It says vatir kavna, which has the clear implication that they said right foot on the right side of the animal, left foot on the left. We know they were traveling that way anyways. They weren't side saddle. They were sitting like people normally sit. They were covered, but they were sitting there with just the language. But you said, Rabbi Shmuel, that's the riot for lashon nikia. No, we have a pasuk that doesn't say like you, Rabbi Shmuel. Says the Gemara, no, that pasuk has an exception. Over there was a fear of camels. Last line of Rashi, Dibra Masil. Mishum biasusa digmalim shu gavoa. The animal's very tall. We've all seen the videos. Umisyara shelotipo. And we're afraid that someone might fall off. Back in the Gemara, that's why urchahi, it's normal to reference a woman traveling that way on a camel, to say vatir kavna, that's not a problem. The pasuk says, I have another proof for you against you, Rabbi Shmuel in the bride. So vaksiv, vaikach Moshe es ishto ve'espanav, and again, vayarkiveim ala chamor. Chamor is not a camel, much lower to the ground. Your concern about biasusa, the fear factor, is gone. And it says vayarkiveim. So how does the Gemara answer? Hasam over there, turning to the top of Gimel Amud Beis, Mishum Banav. No, she's traveling with little kids, and we're referencing the children. Rashi says, Mishum Banav Shein Zacharim Kasav Lashon Rechiva. The language of Rechiva wasn't written for her. It was written for the kids. It was written for the boys. Fine, good. The pasuk says, V'hi rocheves ala chamor. The full pasuk here is a pasuk in Shmuel. I'll just read it from the side here. V'haya hi rocheves ala chamor. She was driving. I think this is speaking about Abigail. V'yoredes b'seiser hahar, and she's driving down the sides of the mountain. V'hine David va'anashav yordim likrasa. And she's traveling in a way where she's going to meet up with David and their men. So why over there rocheves ala chamor? She's female. We should have said vateshavna. Why does it say here rocheves? We should have said yosheves. Says the Gemara, Hasa mishum biasusa de lelia orche. It's traveling at night. At night, the road can be a little bit more difficult to see, so it was because it was nighttime. Or another possibility, maybe it was not because of that. Maybe mishum biasusa deleli aleka. Maybe it wasn't because of that. She wasn't scared of the night. She's fine. She knows how to navigate the night. Mishum biasusa de David ika, but she saw all these men running up the mountain toward her. She was petrified. So the Torah, so the Sefer Shmuel used the language of rocheves. V'baisema, still a third possibility. Ima biasusa de David namileka. Maybe there was no concern at all about David. She knew who it was. But mishum biasusa de har ika. It's a mountain. It's just sloped. It's very steep, and she's scared to fall off. So that's why the pasuk would use it. So now the Gemara is going to go back a little bit. You said that we should not speak b'lashon meguna, right? And what was the proof? That the Torah went out of its way to not say the word tameh. But the Torah says the word tameh all over the place. We just read it right now in Parshas Tazria. It's all over the Torah, the word tameh. So it says the Gemara 7 lines down, mi loksiv tameh. What, nowhere in the Torah does it say the word tameh? Come on, a basic reading. So it says the Gemara, Ella. No, here's the rule. Kol heicha dechi hadadeininu. When it is the same number of letters, then you're good to go. Mishtai b'lashon nekiya. That's when we're going to use the lashon nekiya. That's when we're going to use the preferred language. Kol heicha denufishin mile. Whenever one word is longer than the other, mishtai b'lashon katsara. Then we are going to use the shorter word. And this is kida amar Rav Huna amar Rab, like the shita of Rab. Rav Huna quoting his Rabbi Rab. The Amrei Law, some say it was not that person, but rather Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rab Mishum Reb Meir, going back to the Tanaim. Le'olam yeshane adam letalmido derech kitzara. It's always better to teach concisely. Always. Rashi says 4 lines down in the midst of Dibur Hamaschil v'chol hecha, but we're on the 4th line of Rashi. Rashi says Lashon kitzara lefi shemis kayemes girsa shelo yoser min ha'arucha. Always better to give a short drasha, a Rashi that every pulpit Rav should see. Short is easier to remember. At my Sheva Brachos, I'm sure I've told this before, at my Sheva Brachos, Rabbi Barry Robinson spoke. He read a poem. No surprise, his son, Apples and Trees. He read a poem, and his opening to his speech at my Sheva Brachos was long and bad, very bad. Long and good, bad. Short and bad, good. Short and good, very good. And then he opened up and gave like a 3-minute Dvar Torah for my Sheva Brachos and then sat down. And that was his whole perspective on just mamish this Gemara, that we should try to teach B'Ktzara. We should make sure that we're teaching in as concise a form as possible. It's much easier to remember. Continues the Gemara, 1/3 of the one, not even, about 12 lines down. Is that true that really when all the words are equal, when the words are the same number of letters, you're mishtay b'lashon kavod, you always use the better language? Look at the 2nd line of this page. What did we say? Rocheves ala chamor. So asks the Gemara, v'ha rocheves v'yosheves d'chi adadeininu. Same exact number of letters. And what did we do? V'kama rocheves, and you picked the one that was less modest. So why are you saying that? Answers the Gemara, no. Rocheves ksiv, without the vav. It was chaser. So it was shorter, so it still follows the rule, because when they are the same number of letters, you're right, then you pick the lashon kavod. But now that the word rocheves is shorter because the word is written chaser, so therefore you should still use that word. A couple of stories. Hanu trei talmidei dahavu yasvei kamei Rab. There were 2 students who were sitting in front of Rab, and they just came out of a very, very difficult shir, probably Eruvin. Chad Omar shivisinan haishmaisa kedavar acher misankan. That shir was so difficult, I'm as tired as a davar acher, a reference to a chazer, a reference to a pig. V'chad amar shivisinan haishmaisa kigdi misankan. No, it was a difficult shir, but like a gedi, like a kosher animal, l'chol hapachos, misankan. Rashi explains the word misankan as a lashon of ayefus. I'm very tired. V'lo ishtay rab b'hadei dahayich. He didn't like the language of the one who said davar acher. It's a different level, a different world, a different time. Another story. Han hu trei talmidei dahu yasvei kamei de Hillel. There were 2 students who were in front of the great Hillel. And one of them was the great Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai. The Amrei, some say that the characters in this scene were different. The Tanaim were different. It was Kamei de Rabbi in front of Rabbi Yudanasi, v'chad minayhu Rabbi Yochanan, and one of them was Rabbi Yochanan, and one of the students was, and we don't know who said what, but Chad Amar, one of them asked the following question: Mipnei ma botzrin b'tahara ve'ein moskin b'tahara. Now, these 2 words, boatskin, boatsrin, and moskin, are both words of harvesting. But the word boatsrin is a word that's used by harvesting for grapes. And the word moskin is used by harvesting for olives. So what do we see here? Why is it, and this is in fact the case, that when we harvest for grapes, it has to be b'tahara. But when we harvest for olives, it's ein b'tahara. What do we see? Lashon naki, right? Okay, look at the next example. V'chad amar mipnei ma botzrin b'tahara umoskin b'tuma. It's the same question, right? It's just one's written b'lashon naki and one is written b'lashon ktsara. Which one wins? Beautiful question. Says the Gemara, Amar, whoever the Rebbe was, either Hillel or Rabbi Donat, so we don't know who it was. Amar, he said, Muftachani bazeh shemore hora b'Yisrael. I know that this person, we don't know which person, I know that this person, either the one who said Lashon Naki or the one who said Lashon Ktsara, is going to be a great posek. And in due time, he was a great posek. The Ran here, B'dapei Arif says, we don't know which person he was praising. The one who was B'lashon Naki or the one who was B'lashon Ktsara. We don't know. The Gemara doesn't say. And the Ran quotes this as a machlokas. We don't know, in fact, which one is proper. Another story. Hanu tlasa kahane. There were 3 kohanim. They were all sitting around and talking about the portions of lechem apanim that they got. Chad amar lehu higiyani kipul. I got a small amount like a bean. Chad amar higiyani kizayis. I got a relatively small amount like a kizayis, but more than you got. Chad amar higiyani kiznav halata'ah. I got like the tail of a lizard. Oh, that's a little bit out of bounds. Everyone else was talking in normal shiurim. Pool. We've seen that word in Shas. Kizayis is all over Shas and in the poskim. So come on, what are you talking about? Badku acharov, they did some research on him. They questioned his yichus. Umitzao bo shemetz pasol. They found out he was not a kohen yuchas. We know historically that there was a process. If you were a kohen in the Beis HaMikdash, they vetted you. They made sure that you were a real kohen. That you went back in time, ben achar ben, to make sure that you were a real kohen. So says the Gemara, but wait a minute. V'atanya, you can't check him now. In bokim minam mizbeach u'lamala. Once someone has had their mishmar and they've serviced the mizbeach as a kohen, we don't look back after their yichus. So what do you mean that you did research on this guy after the fact? There's no research anymore. It's all done. So it says the Gemara, no, lo tema shemetz pasul. It's not that they found that he was no longer a kohen yuchas. They didn't do research on him in that way. Ela ema shachatz pasul. They found out that he was just stama bal gaiva. Take a look at Rashi. Immediately to our left, 1 inch up. Rashi dibar maschal shachatz pasul. Hu atzmo haya gasruach umevaze kodshe shamayim ve'enroy l'shamesh. Just a character. It was a character defamation. You can't do this. You can't have this job like that. You're talking in a non-modest way. It's not okay. Some say, in fact, they did go back and question his yichus. On what grounds? Shiny hasam diu daranashe. He brought it up. He spoke in a way that wasn't befitting a kohen. Something's off. So the kohanim said, no, we must have made a mistake on this guy. So we're going to go back and look. Ben Achaben and the Taka was Shemetz Pasul. So 2 different shitas there. Last story of the night. Hahu Arma, there was an Armenian, to have a Salik v'achil Pesachim Yerushalayim, who managed somehow, he faked his way into eating the Korban Pesach. He got Pesachim in Yerushalayim. Omar, he said, oh, look at me. Ksiv, kol ben nechar lo yochal bo, I'm a goyda rice, I'm a ben nechar. Kol arel lo yochal bo, I'm an arel. The ana haka'achilim mishufrei shufrei. I am eating from the best of the best. So before we move on with this story, Tosfos says, wait a minute. This guy just walked up and said, I'm Jewish, and you gave him meat from the Mizbeach? Like, what? Where's our ne'emanus? I can say as a mullah, I deal with this all the time. I'm Jewish. On which side? How do you know you're Jewish? So I recently asked Rabbi First this question, and he said, we can no longer ask the question, are you born to a woman who's Jewish? It's insufficient. I ask families who I've never met before.
He asked Rabbi First if he was Jewish, and how does he know?
Oh, Rabbi First, Rabbi First is Jewish. So that's what I ask families. Are you born to a woman who's Jewish? I ask just like this. I always ask this to families who I don't know. Are you born to a woman who's Jewish? Rabbi First said, insufficient. You should say to them, tell me about your Jewish background. Do you like candles, Shabbos, Kiddush, something, a ta'am? Because they know, the global the royal they know that there are mo'alim who will not make a bracha on that kid's bris if the mother's a good. So I hope I haven't been lied to over the years. I don't know, but I try to do my research. I find people online, make sure they're connected to it. I try to figure out something. I ask mutual friends to make sure they're Taka Jewish. Fine. You got to look at their language, look at their ksuba on the wall. I actually found out that someone was not Jewish from the ksuba on their wall when I went to do a pre-visit. I saw the ksuba on their wall. I'm like, oh, I see your ksuba is very. She said, yeah, I converted with Rabbi Karen, so-and-so from the northern suburbs. Oh, okay. So then I told them I couldn't make a bracha, and they refused to use me. I understand. Not an easy conversation to have. So anyways, Tosfos here picks up on this idea. We're halfway down. Tosfos, Dibra Maskal, Va'ana Achil Mishufrei Shufrei. Tosfos says, Mikan, Ein Raya Shenamin L'chol Habala Fanenu. You cannot just believe anyone who walks up to you and says, V'omer Yisrael Ani. No, that's not what's happening here. What was the state of Yerushalayim at the time? Says Tosos, the shiny hacha, the rov Yisrael hayuvazlin and basaruba. Tosos says this is not a basic ne'emanus of this guy walked up and said, Jewish, can I have some korban meat? That's not what happened. The Kohanim said he's Jewish, and coupled with his statement is rov. Rov of Yerushalayim at the time was Jewish, so therefore he got the korban. But don't make a mistake. Not anyone who says they're Jewish is halachically Jewish. It's insufficient. So this is the story. The guy got to eat mishufre shufre. He ate from the best of the best. He got korban meat. And he said this in front of Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Amar le Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, mikasafu lach me'aliyah. Did they give you the tail? All of this we'll see is that's ridiculous. The tail is burned up on the mizbeach. Nobody eats the tail. It goes up to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So he says mikasafu lach me'aliyah. They didn't give you the best part. So what did the Armenians say back? Amar le lo. He said they didn't give me the good stuff. They gave me the shoulder meat. They didn't give me the tail. I want the tail. If Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira says that's the shmit, that's what I want. So he says, Kisalakta lahasam. When I go there, I'm going to say to them, Safule me'alya, give me from the tail. That's what happened. Kisalik Amar Lahu. When he went up to the Beis HaMikdash, it was Pesach. Amar Lahu me'aliyah safuli. Can you give me a piece of the tail? Cohen looks at him like, what are you talking about? Amar le aliyah lekvoa salka. That doesn't go to you. That goes to Kadosh Baruch Hu. What are you talking about? Amrulay, they said to him, Man Amar Lachachi, who told you to ask for the tail? Answers the Gemara. Amar Luhu, the Armenian said, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. Then everything clicked for the Kohen. The guy standing there, he's standing in line. He's about to give out a piece of meat to this guy. He walks up and says, can I have some of the tail? And Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira was the one who told me to ask for it. The great Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, the Tana, he doesn't make mistakes like that. That's like ABCs. We make mistakes like that because we don't know anything about korbanos. But he didn't. So what does the Kohen say? Amru, my high, they come on. Who is this person standing in front of me? Badku basrei. They did some research on him. Vashkechu de armahu vikatluhu, and they killed him. The Rishon, you get to kill someone for life. It could be gezel. It could be that we have by the Sheva Mitzvos B'nai Noach that there's a very sharp consequence for even sharper than we have in our system. We get punishments for certain things within Yiddishkeit, sometimes Malkos, sometimes worse. But by a goy, it could be that whatever. You have to look in the Rishonim here. Anyways, Shalchu le Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. They sent a note to Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira, and they said, Shalom lach, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. We wanted to send a Shalom Aleichem to you. De'at b'Netzivin. You're in the city of Netzivin. You're not here with us in the Beis HaMikdash. Umitzudasecha prusa b'Yerushalayim. And the net that you've cast has reached Yerushalayim. Namely, you have a far-reaching impact. You made one sentence. You said one thing to that one guy. We found out that he was an Armenian, and he got the consequence that was due to him. We'll stop right here and pick up the Mir Hashem tomorrow night at 8:40 with Daf Daled. Wishing you all a beautiful night.